A young black boy walks into a luxury watch store with $9,000, every cent saved from months of hard work to buy his father a gift. But instead of respect, a white manager mocks him, calls him a liar, humiliates him, then orders security to drag him out like a thief while strangers laugh and film. By nightfall, millions cheer his destruction, until the truth hits: his father is one of the most powerful men in the city. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. The bell above the glass door gave a discreet chime as Jaden pushed it open and stepped into Chronos Elite, the kind of place where time didn't simply tick but posed beneath crystal lights and polished marble. The air carried the faint scent of leather and something expensive he couldn't name, perhaps the smell of money itself, distilled into an atmosphere. Jaden adjusted the strap of his backpack and let his eyes rise to the wall of watches. Brushed steel, rose gold and obsidian dials sat like planets in a careful galaxy. He'd done his research online for weeks, comparing movements and complications, reading reviews and forum discussions. Today was the day he'd finally buy his father's birthday gift. Near the entrance, a greeter with silver hair and a practiced smile surveyed the showroom. When he spotted Jaden, that smile didn't disappear exactly. It just cooled several degrees, like champagne losing its fizz. "Good afternoon," the greeter said, his voice polite but noticeably different from the warmth Jaden had heard him use with the previous customer. "Are you here for someone specific?" The question carried an assumption that Jaden must be a delivery person, or looking for an employee rather than a customer. Before Jaden could answer, the door chimed again. A distinguished man in a navy overcoat entered, white, perhaps 60, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had never been questioned in places like this. The greeter's transformation was immediate and jarring. "Mr. Harrison, what an absolute pleasure to see you again, sir." His voice was suddenly rich with genuine warmth. "I trust the Submariner is treating you well. And how is Mrs. Harrison? I believe she mentioned an anniversary coming up." A white-gloved attendant materialized instantly with champagne that caught the light like liquid amber. Mr. Harrison accepted the flute with casual expectation, as if such treatment was simply the natural order of things. "I'm here to buy a watch," Jaden said, his voice cutting through their reunion. The greeter's attention returned to him with visible reluctance. "Of course, please feel free to browse around." The dismissal was polite but unmistakable. No champagne appeared, no chair was offered, no warm welcome extended. Jaden moved toward the display cases, immediately noticing the careful choreography of service around him. At the far end of the store, an elderly woman in pearls, Mrs. Whitmore, was deep in consultation with two associates. "This Cartier Santos is absolutely stunning on you," one associate was saying, adjusting the bracelet on her wrist. "The rose gold complements your skin tone perfectly. But let me also show you this Patek Philippe. It's a limited edition, only 50 pieces worldwide." She had clearly been there when Jaden arrived, and 20 minutes later she was still trying on watches. Each piece was presented with ceremony, discussed at length, then carefully returned to its case when she showed the slightest hesitation. The staff showed infinite patience. "Take all the time you need, Mrs. Whitmore," they assured her. "A piece this significant deserves careful consideration." Meanwhile, a young white couple approached a nearby case, laughing and taking selfies with the luxury backdrop. Instantly, a sales associate appeared beside them. "Oh, that's a wonderful choice you're looking at," he said eagerly, though they hadn't indicated any particular interest. "That's our new Omega Speedmaster Professional. The same model that went to the moon. Would you like to try it on? I'd be happy to bring it out." He was already reaching for his keys, treating their casual interest as serious buying intent. Jaden had been standing at his chosen display for 15 minutes. No one had offered him champagne, no one had brought out a chair, no one had eagerly explained the heritage of any timepiece or offered to let him try anything on. He studied the watch he'd selected online, an elegant Omega Seamaster with clean lines and complications he'd spent weeks learning to understand. The information card listed technical specifications but no price. He knew from his research it cost $8,200, exactly what he'd saved from 18 months of after-school work at Miller's Market, plus birthday money he'd carefully hoarded. A younger sales associate with nervous energy started walking toward him but stopped abruptly mid-stride. Jaden followed his gaze to see the store manager watching from across the room. Richard Kane was a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of authority that needed no announcement. His slight shake of the head was barely perceptible, but the message was crystal clear. The younger associate suddenly found urgent business elsewhere. Jaden waited another 10 minutes, watching the dance of attention around him. Mrs. Whitmore was now examining her 7th different timepiece. The young couple had been offered wine and was trying on matching his and hers Rolexes just for fun. Mr. Harrison was receiving a private tour of vintage Omegas, complete with historical anecdotes about each piece. Finally, Jaden approached the young associate directly. "Excuse me, could you help me with this Seamaster?" The associate's eyes darted nervously toward Richard, then back to Jaden. I'm sorry, but that particular piece is, well, it's quite expensive. Are you sure you're interested in that price range?" The condescension was wrapped in concern, but it stung just the same. "I'd like to know the price, please." "It's $8,200, the associate said quickly, as if the number itself might scare Jaden away. "Plus tax, of course, that would be over $9,000 total." "I'd like to see it," Jaden said simply. The associate shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, but our policy is to only remove pieces for serious buyers. Insurance reasons, you understand." Across the room, Jaden could see the young couple handling a $15,000 Rolex with no questions asked about their buying intentions or insurance concerns. "I am a serious buyer," Jaden said, his voice remaining steady despite his growing frustration. "I've been researching this exact model for months." "Look, kid," the associate said, dropping his professional demeanor, "maybe you should start with something more appropriate for your age. We have some nice Casio digitals at the mall down the street." The insult was naked now, stripped of any pretense. Before Jaden could respond, Richard Kane materialized beside them. "Is there a problem here?" Richard asked, his tone suggesting the problem was obvious. "I'm trying to purchase this watch," Jaden said, maintaining his composure. "I have the money and I know exactly what I want." Richard's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Son, do you have any idea what we sell here? These aren't toys, these are serious timepieces for serious collectors. I'm serious about buying one." "Really?" Richard's voice rose slightly, attracting attention from nearby customers. "And what exactly do you plan to do with an $8,000 watch? Impress your friends at school?" The mockery was deliberate and public. Mrs. Whitmore looked up from her consultation with clear disapproval. Mr. Harrison shook his head as if witnessing something distasteful. The young couple began discreetly recording on their phones, sensing drama. "It's a gift from my father," Jaden said quietly. "For his birthday." "Your father?" Richard's tone was loaded with disbelief. "And what does your father do that he'd appreciate a luxury Swiss timepiece?" The question was designed to humiliate, to force Jaden to justify his family's worthiness in front of strangers. But Jaden answered with dignity, "He's a businessman. He taught me to save money, to work for what I want." "How noble," Richard said with theatrical sincerity. "And where exactly did you get $8,000? That's quite a lot of money for someone your age to come by." "Legitimately." The word legitimately hung in the air like an accusation. Around them customers and staff leaned in slightly, sensing the implications. Jaden pulled out his wallet, hands beginning to shake with anger and embarrassment. "I work at Miller's Market. I've been saving for over a year plus birthday money I didn't spend." "Miller's Market," Richard interrupted with another dismissive laugh. "Bagging groceries, and you expect me to believe you earned $8,000 bagging groceries? I also do lawn work, and I tutor kids in math." "Right. Of course you do." Richard's sarcasm was thick enough to cut. "A regular young entrepreneur. How inspiring." Mrs. Whitmore whispered loudly to her companion. "They always have some sob story prepared. It's textbook." Mr. Harrison nodded knowingly. "In my day people knew their limitations." The young couple's phones were now openly recording, capturing what they clearly saw as entertainment. Their caption was already being mentally composed. "Delusional kid tries to buy luxury watch he obviously can't afford." Jaden felt the walls of assumption closing in around him, but he pressed on. "I can show you my bank statement. I can call my manager at work. I can prove." "You don't need to prove anything." Richard cut him off with false magnanimity. "I believe you work at a grocery store. I believe you've saved some money. What I don't believe is that it's enough or that you understand what you're asking for." He gestured grandly at the display cases around them. These timepieces represent generations of Swiss craftsmanship, their investments, heirlooms, symbols of achievement and taste. They're not impulse purchases for teenagers with part-time jobs. The lecture was designed to educate Jaden about his place in the world's hierarchy, delivered with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his own position within it. Now, Richard continued, his tone shifting to dismissive finality, I'm sure there are some very nice watches more suited to your situation at the department store downstairs. They have a wonderful selection of fashion watches that would be perfect for someone your age. Jaden felt something break inside him, not his resolve, but his faith in fairness, his belief that showing respect and having money would be enough. I don't want a fashion watch. I want this Omega. I have the money for this Omega. Son, Richard said with exaggerated patience, even if you had the cash, which I doubt, that doesn't make you the right customer for a piece like this. We have a reputation to maintain, a certain clientele to serve. The meaning was unmistakable. You are not our kind of customer. Desperate to prove his legitimacy, Jaden pulled out his phone to show his online research, his saved screenshots of the watch, his price comparisons and specification notes. The moment the device appeared, Richard's demeanor changed completely. What do you think you're doing with that? His voice cut across the store like a whip. Every conversation stopped. Mrs. Whitmore looked up sharply. Mr. Harrison turned with interest. The young couple's recording shifted from casual entertainment to serious documentation. I was showing you my research, Jaden said, holding up the phone so the screen was visible. I have all the specifications saved, price comparisons from different retailers. You were photographing our inventory, Richard announced loudly, playing to his audience. Taking pictures of our displays, our prices, our security arrangements. No, I was showing you my saved listings. Everyone saw you point that camera at our cases, Richard continued, his voice rising with manufactured outrage. Our security cameras record everything. We know exactly what you were doing. The accusation hit like lightning. Around the store, faces turned toward Jaden with suspicion and hostility. Mrs. Whitmore's expression hardened into disgust. Mr. Harrison crossed his arms with satisfaction, as if his suspicions had been confirmed. He was taking pictures the whole time, Mrs. Whitmore announced to the room. I saw him lurking around those cases studying everything, probably planning to come back later with accomplices. In my day we called that casing the joint, Mr. Harrison added with authority. The young couple was now filming openly, their content becoming more dramatic by the minute. This was gold, a real-life confrontation with a would-be criminal. I wasn't taking pictures, Jaden protested, his voice cracking with desperation. I was showing you my research. I've been planning this purchase for months. Planning is the right word, Richard said ominously. The question is, planning what exactly? He produced his own phone with theatrical flourish. Security, I need you up here immediately. We have a situation developing. Please don't call security, Jaden begged, panic rising in his voice. I'm not doing anything wrong. I just want to buy a gift for my father. Your father again, Richard said with cruel amusement. This mysterious businessman father who supposedly raised a son with such refined taste. The pause before refined made it clear what he really thought. He's not mysterious. His name is Nathaniel Cross, and he owns Cross. Richard interrupted with theatrical surprise. Cross Industries, the Nathaniel Cross. His voice was loaded with mockery. How convenient, and I suppose next you'll tell me your mother is Oprah Winfrey. The laughter from the gathered crowd was like daggers. Even the staff members who hadn't been directly involved were now watching with amusement, enjoying the spectacle of a young pretender being put in his place. You know what I think, Richard continued, warming to his performance. I think you got your father's name from a Forbes list. I think this whole elaborate story is designed to justify whatever you were really planning to do here. Two security guards appeared as if materialized from the walls themselves, flanking Jaden with practiced efficiency. The crowd of customers and staff had formed a rough circle around the drama, phones recording, voices murmuring with satisfaction. Wait, Jaden said desperately, looking around at the faces surrounding him. You're making a terrible mistake. I can prove everything I've said. My bank account, my work records, my father's business. The only mistake, Richard announced grandly, was allowing this charade to continue as long as it did. He gestured to the guards. Escort this young man out, and make sure to review the security footage. I want to know exactly what he photographed and how long he was casing our displays." The guards moved with professional detachment, but their grip was firm. Jayden didn't resist. What was the point? In the court of appearances, he'd already been tried, convicted, and sentenced. As they marched him toward the door, the crowd parted with visible satisfaction. Mrs. Whitmore was already back to examining watches, her faith in the natural order restored. Mr. Harrison was nodding approvingly to anyone who would listen. "That's how you handle troublemakers." Swift and decisive, the young couple had already switched from recording to editing, adding captions and hashtags. "Thief caught red-handed at luxury store. #justice, #busted, #karma, #luxury watch, #caught." "Make sure you get his face clear," Mrs. Whitmore called to her friend, who was still filming. "The police will want to identify him properly." "This is exactly what's wrong with kids today," Mr. Harrison proclaimed to the room. "No respect, no boundaries, thinking they're entitled to everything." The marble floors echoed with the sound of Jayden's sneakers being dragged across them, a hollow, defeated sound that seemed to announce his humiliation to every corner of the store. As the glass doors opened, Jayden caught one final glimpse of the interior. Everything looked exactly as it had when he'd entered an hour earlier, full of hope and excitement about surprising his father. The watches still gleamed in their cases, the crystal fixtures still cast their perfect light, the marble still shone like a mirror. But something fundamental had changed. The store that had seemed like a temple of craftsmanship and luxury now felt like a courtroom where he'd been found guilty of the crime of existing while black. The sidewalk of Fifth Avenue felt like another world, noisy, chaotic, real. Behind him, Chronos Elite returned to its normal rhythm, his ejection having solved whatever problem his presence had created. The videos were already going viral. The young couple's post hit Instagram and TikTok simultaneously, shared thousands of times within the first hour. Mrs. Whitmore's friend had captured the audio perfectly, including every accusation and denial, but the captions told a different story. Would-be thief gets what he deserves, and finally, store security that actually works. The narrative was simple and satisfying to viewers. Suspicious person attempts elaborate con, gets exposed by vigilant staff, faces appropriate consequences. The complexity of what had actually happened, a paying customer humiliated for the crime of being young and black, was lost in the rush to viral judgment. Comments poured in by the thousands. "You can always spot them coming. Bet his businessman father's story was total BS. Good for the store manager. Finally someone with backbone. These kids think they're entitled to everything. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." Jayden sat on the concrete steps of a nearby building, scrolling through the avalanche of hate and mockery. Strangers were dissecting his character, celebrating his humiliation, creating a permanent digital record of the worst hour of his young life. His hands shook as he finally found the courage to call his father. "Dad," he said when Nathaniel answered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I tried to buy you a birthday present. I saved for 18 months, and they made everyone think I'm a thief." The silence stretched so long that Jayden wondered if the call had dropped. When Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed to reach across decades. "Son, I need you to tell me everything. Every word they said, everything they did, every person who was there. And then I need you to tell me the exact name of that store." "Dad, the video is everywhere. Millions of people think the video will be evidence, son. Evidence of something that's been happening far too long." Nathaniel's voice was steady now, controlled, but underneath it Jayden could hear something building like distant thunder. "Tell me everything. And then go home and wait. This isn't over." What Jayden didn't know was that his ordeal had awakened something in his father that had been dormant for 30 years. Nathaniel Cross had built his empire partly to ensure his children would never face the humiliation he'd endured, but some battles couldn't be won with money alone. They required a different kind of power entirely. The viral videos spreading across the internet weren't just entertainment. They were evidence. And by morning they would become the foundation for a reckoning that would shake the luxury retail world to its core. But first, they had to spread far enough to ensure everyone saw exactly what injustice looked like when it wore an expensive suit and hid behind marble walls. By dawn, the videos had been viewed over 5 million times. #Chronos Late scandal was trending worldwide. The footage had been dissected, analyzed and debated across every platform, with the overwhelming majority celebrating what they saw as justice served to a would-be thief. But some viewers saw something different. Civil rights attorneys shared the clips with sharp commentary about racial profiling. Journalists began investigating the store's history. Former employees started coming forward with their own stories. And in a conference room overlooking Central Park, Nathaniel Cross was putting the finishing touches on the most expensive acquisition of his career. The convoy of black vehicles that slid to the curb outside Kronos Elite just after 10 a.m. announced that the game had fundamentally changed. The Rolls-Royce emerged from morning traffic like a dark promise, followed by sedans carrying lawyers, investigators, and financial advisors. Nathaniel Cross stepped onto the sidewalk wearing a charcoal suit that whispered rather than shouted authority. Beside him walked Jaden, not the humiliated boy from yesterday's viral sensation, but a young man standing with quiet dignity beside his father. Inside the store, Richard Kane was fielding another call from corporate when he spotted the convoy through the window. He'd spent the night in crisis management mode, watching the view counts climb, crafting statements that painted his actions as necessary security measures. The door chimed, and suddenly every conversation in the store died. Nathaniel didn't announce himself. He simply stood in the center of the marble floor and waited until every eye in the showroom was focused on him. Yesterday, he began, his voice carrying easily through the space, "My son came to your store to make a purchase." Instead, he was profiled, accused, humiliated and ejected based entirely on the color of his skin. Richard stepped forward, his crisis training kicking in. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but we have security protocols." Security protocols. Nathaniel's voice was deadly quiet. "Yes, let's examine those protocols very carefully." A portable screen flickered to life, displaying the store's own security footage from the previous day. The timestamp showed Jaden's entire visit, every respectful moment, every patient wait, every attempt to make a legitimate purchase. "This is your security threat?" Nathaniel asked. "A teenager browsing quietly, standing respectfully by your displays, attempting to make a significant purchase." The footage continued, showing the stark contrast in treatment, Mrs. Whitmore handling multiple expensive pieces without question, Mr. Harrison examining watches freely, the young couple photographing displays for social media without suspicion. "Your own cameras reveal the truth you tried to hide," Nathaniel continued. "Systematic discrimination disguised as customer service." Richard's face began to drain of color as he realized this wasn't just an angry parent, this was something far more dangerous. The screen changed to display customer service records, demographic data and complaint patterns. The numbers painted an undeniable picture. In 18 months your store has accused 21 customers of theft or suspicious behavior. 20 were black or Latino. The 21st was a white woman with dementia. Nathaniel let the statistics sink in. Your security protocols aren't just biased, they're illegally discriminatory. Around the store, yesterday's audience was gathering again. Mrs. Whitmore stood near the Cartier display, her face showing the first signs of discomfort. Mr. Harrison lingered by the vintage Omegas, his previous certainty beginning to waver. But discrimination was just the beginning of yesterday's crimes, Nathaniel continued. What happened next was character assassination in real time. The screen now showed social media feeds, the viral videos, the mocking captions, the millions of comments celebrating Jaden's humiliation. View counts, share statistics and engagement metrics painted a picture of systematic destruction of a child's reputation. "Your customers turned my son's humiliation into entertainment," Nathaniel said, his voice hardening. "They filmed his distress, posted it globally, and celebrated his pain for social media points." Mrs. Whitmore's face flushed red. The young couple from yesterday had backed toward the exit, suddenly understanding that their viral content might have consequences. "Sir," Richard tried desperately, "if mistakes were made." Mistakes. The word cut through the air like a blade. "Let me show you what systematic racism looks like in practice." The screen filled with testimonials, dozens of customers, all black or Latino, describing identical experiences at Kronos Elite. Dr. Michelle Santos, the renowned cardiologist, had been told a $12,000 Cartier was probably outside her budget before she'd asked about price. Federal Judge Robert Kim had been asked to use the service entrance. Celebrity attorney Lisa Washington had been followed by security throughout her visit. Each story struck like a physical blow, the pattern undeniable and devastating. These aren't isolated incidents, Nathaniel continued. They're standard operating procedure. You've created a machine designed to humiliate people who look like my son, and yesterday that machine worked exactly as intended. The silence in the store was deafening. Staff members stared at their feet. Yesterday's triumphant customers now looked smaller, diminished by their complicity in documented injustice. Which brings me to why I'm here, Nathaniel said, his voice shifting to something even more ominous. Financial documents filled the screen, corporate debt structures, acquisition papers, overnight negotiations. Your parent company has been insolvent for 14 months, surviving on borrowed time and hidden debt. At 3 a.m. this morning, my investment group acquired that debt, along with controlling interest in every property and subsidiary. Richard's legs nearly buckled. The marble floor seemed to shift beneath him as the implications crashed down. That's impossible, he whispered. Your corporate masters sold you out in under 6 hours, Nathaniel explained with cold precision. When we offered to assume their liabilities at a premium, they couldn't sign fast enough. The documents confirmed everything. The secret bankruptcy, the desperate midnight sale, the complete transfer of ownership while Richard slept. Everything you see, Nathaniel gestured to the gleaming store around them, now belongs to me. Richard looked around wildly, as if seeing the space for the first time. The marble floors, the crystal fixtures, the cases full of precious timepieces, none of it was his anymore. The kingdom he'd ruled through prejudice had fallen without him even knowing a war had begun. Please, he said, his voice breaking. I have a family, 23 years in this business. I'll do anything. Yesterday you turned my son into a viral joke watched by millions, Nathaniel cut him off. You made strangers around the world believe he was a criminal. Did you consider his future when you destroyed his reputation? The question hung unanswered because they both knew the truth. Richard had never considered Jaden fully human, never thought about lasting damage, never imagined consequences. The boy you humiliated, Nathaniel continued, will carry that shame forever. Employers will Google his name and find videos of him being dragged from your store. College admissions officers will see millions of people calling him a thief. You didn't just eject a customer, you tried to destroy a child's entire future. Each word hit like a hammer blow. Around the store, the reality was sinking in. They hadn't just witnessed discrimination, they'd participated in the destruction of an innocent person's life for their own entertainment. I'm sorry, Richard whispered, the words barely audible. Sorry doesn't undo 5 million views, said a quiet voice. Jaden stepped forward, and suddenly every eye in the store was focused on the boy they'd so eagerly condemned just 24 hours earlier. Sorry doesn't erase the death threats in my DMs, he continued, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was revealing. It doesn't fix the fact that my name is now permanently associated with theft and lies. His words carried the authority of lived experience, of understanding exactly what viral humiliation meant in the digital age. But Jaden said, his voice growing stronger, maybe what happened to me can save other people from the same thing. The simplicity of his statement made it more powerful than any speech. Here was a 14-year-old offering redemption, not for his own benefit, but for strangers he'd never meet. What do you want to see happen? Nathaniel asked his son. I want everyone who contributed to my humiliation to understand what they really did, Jaden replied. And then I want them to help make sure it never happens again. He looked directly at Mrs. Whitmore, who was now visibly crying, at Miss Harrison, whose earlier certainty had crumbled into shame, at the young couple, who were realizing their viral content had destroyed an innocent person's reputation. I want this place to change completely, Jaden continued. Not just policies, but people. I want staff who see customers, not stereotypes. I want luxury that includes everyone, not just people who look a certain way. His words carried a moral authority that transcended his years, shaped by an experience no child should have endured. Miss Whitmore stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I said terrible things. I thought I believed. She couldn't finish the sentence. "You believed what you wanted to believe," Jaden replied with devastating accuracy. "Because it made you feel better about yourself." The truth of it was undeniable. Everyone in that store had wanted to see him as a threat because it confirmed their assumptions about the world and their place in it. "We all did," Mr. Harrison admitted, his earlier bluster completely gone. "We all chose to see what we expected instead of what was really happening." The young couple approached hesitantly. "We can delete the videos," the girl offered. "We can post corrections, explanations." "The videos are evidence now," Nathaniel interjected. "Evidence of how quickly people will destroy an innocent person if it makes them feel superior." He turned to address the entire room. "Every person here yesterday contributed to what happened. You watched, you judged, you filmed, you shared, you turned a child's humiliation into entertainment." The weight of collective guilt was crushing. These people, who had felt so righteous 24 hours earlier, now understood they had participated in something monstrous. But Jaden said quietly, "You can also help fix it." 1 year later, the transformation was complete, not just of the store, but of everyone who had been part of that day. Kronos Elite had become a model for inclusive luxury retail, its staff trained to see behavior rather than appearance, its policies rewritten to ensure equal treatment for all customers. The viral videos that had once celebrated Jaden's humiliation were now used in diversity training programs across the industry. Richard Kane had kept his position, but he was a fundamentally changed man. The experience had shattered his worldview and rebuilt it around conscious inclusion rather than unconscious bias. He personally oversaw every customer interaction, ensuring that dignity was never again sacrificed to prejudice. Mrs. Whitmore had become an advocate for racial justice, using her privilege and connections to fund bias training programs. Mr. Harrison volunteered at youth mentorship programs, trying to undo some of the damage his assumptions had caused. The young couple had deleted their original videos and replaced them with a documentary about viral mob justice and its victims. Their follower count had dropped, but their humanity had grown immeasurably. On the anniversary of that terrible day, Jaden returned to complete the purchase that had started everything. This time, he was greeted not as a curiosity or a symbol but simply as a valued customer. As he examined the same Omega Seamaster that had triggered his ordeal, he reflected on the journey from viral humiliation to systemic change. The pain had been real, the damage lasting, but from it had grown something precious, proof that even the most entrenched prejudices could be overcome when enough people decided that change wasn't just possible but necessary. The watch ticked steadily on his wrist as he walked down Fifth Avenue, each second marking not just the passage of time but the possibility of progress. Behind him, the store that had once measured his worth by the color of his skin now served customers without regard to race or appearance. Some changes, Jaden had learned, came through viral moments that shook the world in hours. Others took years of patient work, one interaction at a time, one prejudice confronted at a time. Both kinds mattered in building a more just society. The weight of time, he now understood, wasn't just about mechanical precision or digital virality. It was about the moments that tested character, the choices that revealed values, and the courage to use whatever time we had to lift others up instead of tear them down. In a world where assumptions could destroy lives in minutes and mob judgment could spread across continents in hours, every act of fairness mattered. Every moment of seeing the person instead of the stereotype counted. Time moved forward for everyone, but how it was valued, whose minutes mattered, whose dignity was preserved, whose potential was recognized, that remained a choice. The luxury wasn't in the timepiece itself, but in using time wisely to build a world where everyone's moments were treated as precious. As Jaden disappeared into the Manhattan crowd, the anniversary gift secure on his wrist, the videos that had once symbolized his destruction continued their new life as tools for education and change, proving that even the darkest viral moments could be transformed into light, for others, walking the same difficult path toward justice.